Hi everyone, I'm Russ Hamilton. I'm a retired sergeant with the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation.
Hey Chair Talk fans, Russ Hamilton here coming at you. Anthony Ganji asked me to drop him a quick little video on key and tool control. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. He also asked me to try and come up with some whiz-bang ideas about key and tool control that maybe haven't been heard too much. Not sure if I'm up to that challenge or not, because I think everyone here is pretty hip on key and tool control, but you never know. So I'm going to try and look at it from two different viewpoints, the advanced officer viewpoint, but also the unknowing public or just kind of non-custody staff viewpoint. So starting from the very beginning, key and tool control, it's critical. If we don't know where keys are 100% of the time and where certain tools are 100% of the time, it can cost people lives and it can endanger the public. We don't want any of those things to happen. So there's a lot of different setups with regard to key and tool control. Every institution is going to be different. So there's just kind of a broad generalization that I'm going to go into. And that's, usually there's some kind of exchange for tools and or keys. Sometimes it's chits. Sometimes it's a signature. Sometimes it's reading into a computer with your ID card. All of those things are going to be different place to place. But the important thing to really keep in mind is what we do with those things after we check them out. So after we check them out, the number one thing that I recommend is that you get yourself a lanyard. If you keep that key set or particular tool or whatever it is that you've checked out on your lanyard 100% of the time to your belt so that it can't go away, it can't be surreptitiously lifted off, you can't drop it and leave it somewhere, you can't end up throwing it in a drawer and just forgetting that you've put it there, or worse yet, taking your whole belt off and throwing it in a drawer. I've seen that a few times. I think maybe all of us have. You'll be able to make sure that you can account for what you've checked out 100% of the time. So that's number one. You've got to have that lanyard on. I know that doesn't sound very advanced, but if you do it the same way all the time, you'll always know where your keys are within a foot or two, depending on how big around you are or whatever. So that's number one. Number two is when we're keeping a set of keys on our belts like that, we want to do the same thing we do with all of the stuff on our belt. We want to keep it in the same place in the exact same way every single time. Why do we do that? We do that because under stress, you will forget where things are and how they're placed if you don't do it the same way every time. So we don't want to have to do a bunch of thinking up here. We want things to come automatically to us so that we're able to reach to them, keep them in the exact same order every time. We do this with everything on the belt. Our OC spray, for me, it was always on the left. So was my baton, but I would cross draw, so I always to my right hand. That way I could keep OC in one hand, baton in the other. Also with the cuffs, I always kept my cuffs up front, always put in the exact same way with the single bars toward my belly button up front, where I didn't have to ever think about the way my equipment was configured on my belt. So on keys, there's another part of that though. Not only should they be in the same position and in the same type of pouch every single time, but they should also be turned in the exact same way every time. Now, one of the things that I used to have a 9mm magazine leather piece on there, for two different magazines, and then that way I could put those big fat Folger Adams in there, and then when I would turn them, they would always be the same way every time. So that if I had 4, 5, 6, I think at one time I had a set of, I think it was 7 or 8 Folger Adams at a time that I would have to check out. They'd all be on the same key ring, but it was massive. So it's hard if you don't have a way of indexing those and remembering which order they're in to deal with it. But because I would put them in my pouch the same way every time, and I always knew which one was closest to me and which was further away, I could index them as I started to reach for them, and it became easy. Okay, key number 1, 2, 3 from the outside would be to this gate or another gate or some other, whatever it is, so that I didn't look like I was fumbling for things and it didn't take me a lot of time to get to them. That's absolutely critical when it comes to emergencies, because knowing that when seconds count, you're just 1 or 2 minutes away from being able to find the right key, it's not acceptable. So I think those are the primary things that go into considering key and tool control, and the things that you have to, really be cognizant about. The being able to retain them, out there on that lanyard, you want something strong. If for some reason, God forbid, you should be in a tussle with the keys, you want to be able to, that inmate's grabbing those keys and he's got his knuckles around him, but he's got them at the end of that lanyard where you can, drop and turn and hopefully rip one of his fingers off so you can keep control of those things. And you want to never be in a position where you're not thinking about what you're doing with those keys. They should always be returned to the pouch every single time. You want to make sure that you're not able to throw them in a desk, or worse yet, take off your belt, throw it and the keys into a desk. So it's that accountability that keeps us from doing silly things that cost people lives, endangering the public, or least of all, looking bad in print media or on the 11 o'clock news at night. So anyway, I hope that all of you got a little something out of that. I know it seems kind of basic, but sometimes it's worth mentioning again. Anyway, all of you take care, stay safe,